Hello and welcome to this workshop webinar on preparing for the transition to primary school. This webinar has been developed and recorded by the HSE Developmental and Autism Psychology Service in Carlow and Kilkenny. Before we begin, I'd like to run through just a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar will last for approximately 45 minutes and you can pause the webinar at any stage if you need to. The beginning of each new section is marked by a green slide, such as the one you're looking at on the screen right now, and that might be a good place to pause if necessary. Make sure you have a pen and paper handy just in case you want to take down any notes or the names of any resources that are recommended. And if you have any technical difficulties watching this webinar, please contact us at the service in Bethany House if you live in the Carlow catchment area, or Kilcreen Children's Services if you live in the Kilkenny catchment area. So just to go through a brief outline of what we're going to cover in the webinar today, I'm going to talk about the importance of the transition, preparing as a parent, preparing your child, linking with teacher and school, the first day, after school, follow-up, and then some further resources as well. And I just want to acknowledge at this point that for those of you watching this, you all are likely at different points in terms of understanding what your own child's needs are. You might be awaiting assessments, you might be awaiting diagnostic assessments, autism assessments, different things that might be needed in terms of clarifying what, if anything, is underlying some of your child's needs. So the other important piece to acknowledge is that some of you might be very familiar with the education system, with the NCSE, which is the National Council for Special Education, and with special education provision. And for others of you watching this, this might be your first time entering the education system and trying to navigate the system that's there. So it's just to acknowledge that there's an awareness that you're all at different stages and different levels in terms of your own knowledge. So this webinar is a very general webinar. The information covered is very general, the advice is going to be general, and some of it will be applicable to your child and some of it might not be in terms of the stage that you're at. So to start with the importance of the transition. So obviously this is a major event in any child's life, starting primary school, and it's also a major event in the lives of us as parents, and in seeing our children starting in school for the very first time. And we do know that children who have a positive start to school are likely to engage well and to experience academic and social success. So it is important to do a little bit of planning and preparation for that. And for children with additional needs, this transition can be a little bit more challenging, but there is a lot that we can do to help support what their needs are and to help them manage that transition in a really positive way. So the next section is about planning and preparation for the transition. So planning and preparation starts well before your child enters primary school and quite often begins at the preschool age. And it's really important to identify your child's strengths and areas that they might find more difficult when you're planning and when you're preparing for this transition. So it's also really important to identify and consider different schools that are familiar working with children with additional needs and perhaps with your child's own particular needs. That can be really helpful if they already have a sense and awareness of that. So it's also really important that families are prepared for the transition and what might be involved and what's needed. And it's really helpful to get perspectives from parents, from preschool staff and from teachers as well to try and establish some good practices and to support the transition. So a sense of everybody coming together because everybody is playing a vital role in the success of that adjustment into school. And everybody who is a stakeholder in that shares all of the common concerns, but the focus might be a little bit different for each person involved. So it's really important that the views and the opinions and the expectations of everyone involved, from preschool to the primary school staff and for parents too, that everything is together, and everybody's views are there on the table when considering this transition. So, to take a little look at preparing as a parent and what are the things that you might be considering. So, firstly, to think about choosing a school. So, from the outset, it's important to say that this is not always a straightforward thing to do. And I suppose in our own local areas of Carlow and Kilkenny, we have several different school placement options available. So, for example, we have autism classes that are aligned to mainstream schools. We have classes for children with intellectual disabilities that are aligned to mainstream schools. We have specialist schools for children with autism. We have specialist schools for children with intellectual disabilities or learning needs. And we have a specialist school for children with emotional and behavioural difficulties, as well as all the mainstream schools that are there as well. So there's lots of different options, which is wonderful, but can also be overwhelming and quite confusing in terms of what's the best option to choose. Different school types have different levels of supports, and they also sometimes have different eligibility criteria as well. So it's really important to familiarise yourself with schools in your area, check their eligibility criteria if they have any, and see if this applies to your child. And a really good way of doing this is to link with your local special educational needs organiser, which is also known as the SENO. And their role is to provide you with information about what the different school options are, what supports are available in the different school options. So they can really support your information gathering and knowledge of what's there and what might be appropriate for your child. They can also give you information on places and where places are available. I suppose the school options that are there are it's important to know what they are, but some of them are full and some of them are filling up and all of that. So they can give you an idea of what places are available and where those places are. So the contact details for the SENOs in each of the areas of Carlow and Kilkenny are on your screen. They're very open to parents contacting them directly and going through any concerns and that you might have and sharing any information that you might need as well. The other thing to consider is that many schools will have waiting lists, so make sure you give yourself enough time to explore all your options. You can always put your child's name down on different waiting lists, even if you're not sure that that's going to be a good option for them, and you can take their name off that list at a later stage if you need to. It's a really good idea to visit schools and get a sense of how your child might succeed and how they might thrive in that environment, and what is on offer for them in terms of whether that environment is going to be good for them or not. So, taking a look then at school supports and what's available in the mainstream system. So, if you choose a mainstream school for your child, there is a new model of resource allocation, so resource teaching, special educational teaching, which was previously known as learning support or resource teaching, and this changed in 2017. So, the big change here was that it moved towards being a needs-based model as opposed to diagnosis-based. So previously, in order to access additional resource teaching at school, your child would have had to have a particular diagnosis, and that would entitle them to a certain number of hours within the resource teaching allocation at the school. There were tons of issues with that model, and one of the most significant being that there were certain types of additional needs that weren't catered for at all within that model. So, for example, children with Down syndrome weren't allocated anything additional, just based on that alone. They would have had to have other factors, where they might have had intellectual disabilities or something like that to entitle them to resource teaching. So happily, that has changed, and it's now looked on as a needs-based approach. So the school is given the pot of resource hours at the beginning of the year, and it's up to the school to divide out those hours and allocate them according to the level of need that's there for each of the children, not what their diagnosis might be. So it's really important that you know that your child can access that if they have the needs that require that. Teaching support within the mainstream school system involves, and how that works, so learning support teaching. It can be team teaching, small group teaching, and where necessary it will be one-to-one teaching, but it's more often small groups where they might be working on literacy or numeracy, social skills pieces as well. All of those things usually carried out in small group teaching. SNA allocation, so that's the special needs assistant within mainstream schools, has also changed recently. So again, it was previously the case that your child would have had to have a diagnosed disability and or additional need and a professional report stating that. That is no longer needed for SNA allocation, and it's similar to the resource teaching allocation in that it is needs driven, and it is up to the school to allocate that resource as they see fit. So you no longer need a professional report to recommend that your child requires SNA allocation. And the National Education Psychology Service, NEPS, is just marked there just so that you know that support is available to schools. Once your child is attending a mainstream school, any school-based issue that might need psychological input is managed through the NEPS service, and you can talk to your school about having your child prioritised for their assessment or consultation or intervention with their NEPS psychologist. So one final point on this slide, just to say that although a diagnosis or a report is no longer necessary to access resource teaching or SNA support, it still is a beneficial thing to have if you have any professional reports, to forward those and any documents that you have to school personnel in advance of the transition, because this allows them to help plan for your child's needs and what supports they might need. I suppose bearing in mind that the primary school that your child is going to go to, they do not know your child or what their needs are, so it's really helpful for them to have some documentation around that, and anything that you can provide is going to be of assistance. So parent support in terms of making the decision around where to send your child, this often comes from family and friends, and talking things through and trying to decide what might be the best option for your child. Nobody knows your child better than you do. Your family and your friends know them very well, and they can help with the decision and teasing things out, but you are the only one who knows truly what is going to be the best thing for your child. So it's a really good idea to talk to your own support network, as well as other parents who have children with additional needs who have already undergone this process of transition into primary school. That can be a really good source of information and support as well. Asking them questions, gathering information can really help you to make an informed decision about what might be best for your own child. There's lots of parent support groups as well, where you can link with other parents and get a sense of what they found or what were the things that they considered when they were trying to make this decision as well. So moving on then to preparing your child for the transition. Some of the challenges that children can face in the transition into primary school: firstly, there can be learning differences. Secondly, social and communication skills. There can be challenges there that might make it more difficult for them to understand their environment or when people are interacting with them, so that can be a challenge. There can be sensory or emotional regulation issues, which might need a certain approach or particular strategies that can help with those things. So it's just important to consider those. There might be particular repetitive behaviors or specific interests that help your child to feel calm and to feel in control and regulated. So managing those in terms of the transition is really important. And then in terms of mobility issues as well, and figuring out how that they might be impacted on by the environment in the school and whether there are any particular challenges there that need addressing. So these difficulties can interfere with active participation in classroom activities and then moving between tasks as well. So they just need a little bit of consideration in terms of how they're going to be managed. So what can parents do? Well, in the first instance, visiting your child's new school with them is really important. And this helps your child to visualize what the school is going to look like, what it smells like, what the environment is like, and all of those things. So when you're there and when you're on the visit, do make notes or take note of all of the features that they like, that they find exciting. So if it's the sensory room, if it's the games in the classroom, if it's the outside space, the yard or the garden, take a note of that, because these are really useful reference points when you're discussing a school later with your child. So remember, you liked the garden and we saw the plants that were there, whatever it is that they liked. If it's possible, take pictures of your child's new classroom, the outside of the school building, any of the places that they're going to be in the school. If that's possible to do that, definitely do, so that you can use that as a visual support for your child when you're helping to prepare them for their first day at home. So other ideas then in terms of what you can do to help prepare for the transition. Really good idea to talk about school over the summer and involve your child in the preparation for starting. Talk about the different people that they might meet at school, what their different roles are. So the caretaker, the secretary, the principal, the teacher, special needs assistant, all of those different roles and what they do. Do ensure that you get the information on what the school rules are, what the PE arrangements are, the uniform, etc. Some schools have a tracksuit, some have a uniform and a tracksuit. So, just knowing what days they're supposed to wear what on and what the rules are around that can really help to know that in advance, so that you can prepare your child for that and so that there's no stress in terms of them not having the correct uniform as well. The other point about that also is, if your child has particular sensory needs in terms of wearing particular clothes or anything like that, knowing what the uniform is in advance and making any adjustments where you might need to can really help avoid any stress related to them being uncomfortable in the uniform. So just doing a little bit of prep around that can really help. Other ideas for prepping for the transition into school: do buy the different items that you're going to need in terms of the lunchbox and the new uniform gradually over the summer, and do allow your child to get used to them, to try them out, to have a go at opening and closing everything, and become very familiar with them before school starts. So you can practice getting dressed for school and give your child their lunch in their lunchbox a few times over the summer break as well, can really help to get them used to that. Try to pick school bags and lunch boxes, beakers, all of those kinds of things that are really easy for your child to open, and to open themselves if possible. And if they're struggling with that, just to practice that a little bit over the summer. And if they can't manage that, move to maybe an easier version of the same thing. So just to be aware of that and choose things that they can manage themselves. In the week before starting school, so in August time, just before school starts back, do practice getting up at the time that you will be getting up at when school starts. And then in the week or two before school starts, give them their breakfast and their lunch in and around the same time they will be having it in school in September. So if you can find out what the break time is in advance, and most schools that's very set, so it'll be the same every year. So try and find that out in advance so that you can practice giving your child their food and their meals at those times so that they get used to that sense of the routine. Using structure and visuals can really help prepare your child. Many classrooms use these, even mainstream classrooms will have some visual schedules in place as well. The whole class benefits from this. So using these at home can really help get your child familiar with them. It can help reduce any anxieties. It can help to increase their sense of independence, and learn about what's coming next and prepare for that. So there's loads of different ways that you can do this, and on the screen are some examples of this, and what the different tools are that you can use. Why are we recommending using visual supports? Well, firstly, it helps to reduce language demands. So schools can be very verbal environments where instructions are often given verbally and all of that. So if you can work on using some visuals and work with your teacher to introduce those into the classroom if they're not already there, which is, it's more likely that they are there, but if they're not, work with your teacher to introduce them. It helps to reduce down those language demands, and we do know that when, if for any of us, if we are stressed, our ability to process language reduces. So having some visual supports there is really, really helpful in case there is any increased stress. Visual supports really help your child to understand their environment, to understand what the demands are on them, what the rules are. So definitely they can support in those areas. They help to your children to keep calm, and they encourage independence, as we were talking about just a moment ago. And children with additional needs really benefit from an environment that is very organised and predictable. That reduces any stress, reduces anxieties. It just helps them to know what's coming next. And visual supports really, really help with that. So one idea to help your child to prepare for school is to introduce a social story all about their new school. So some of you might be using social stories already. If you're not, they're a very helpful, wonderful tool, very easy to use, and they help to explain a new situation to your child, what other people might feel in that situation and how they might respond if they feel the same way. So I'll take you through the social story in a moment, but just to say at the outset, the idea of this would be to read this story with your child several times, which can assist them to become familiar with the environment in the story. And you can incorporate reading or viewing the social story into your daily routine at home and in the preschool setting as well. So to do this before the transition visits to the school, and then at school with primary school staff as well during those transition visits. So if you're having visits over the summer to help prep for the transition, that's called a transition visit. And then before and during the morning of the first day of school, so to really reinforce and support that transition into the new environment and help it to become really, really familiar before your child actually has to go there. So what does this social story look like in terms of my new school? So this is an example of one. Obviously you can adapt this for your own child's particular needs, and the visuals obviously will change depending on where your child is going. So it looks something like this. This is my new school. It is called whatever your school is called. I will start my new school in September. I will usually go to school on all the days that your child is there. There is no school on Saturday or Sunday. This is called the weekend. Saturday and Sunday is the weekend. So just a little visual to support that. I will usually go to school with mum or whoever it is that's bringing your child to school, and a nice visual of them. I will usually go to school by car or by bus or by walking or however your child is getting to school. I will usually wear, and you can circle or colour in whatever is appropriate for your child to wear to school, whatever their uniform consists of. Here is my teacher, and you can ask your teacher for a real picture of themselves. Most teachers are absolutely fine about sending that on for this purpose. And you can put in then as well, his or her name is, he or she will help me with my work. Here is my classroom. I will sit on a chair at my desk. So again, helping to give your child a sense of what their classroom is going to look like and also what's expected of them in the room. So I sit at my chair at my desk. There will be lots of children in my class. They will be my new friends. So helping to prepare for the fact that there will be lots of other children there. I will learn about letters and numbers. I will colour and draw. I will sometimes play. So again, giving them an idea of what happens at school. At lunchtime, I might eat and whatever their favourite lunch is, and I might drink whatever they like to drink. Mum or dad will get me my lunch ready for me to bring to school. At break time, I will usually go outside. I might play whatever their favourite game is. When it is wet or too cold, I might not go out at break time. Instead, I might stay in my classroom or go to the holla. When school finishes, and insert whoever's name is appropriate, will usually pick me up and bring me home. So it might be a grandparent, it might be mum, it might be dad, it might be a childminder, whoever is bringing them home. It might be the school bus that brings them home. So moving on then to teacher and school preparation. So class and school preparation. So identifying who the school staff are going to be and who the teacher is going to be, who the support staff are going to be. So who's going to be the learning support teacher? Is there an SNA that your child is going to have? So identifying all of those people where it's possible to do that in advance is really important. Many schools mightn't allocate this until well into August. So it just depends on what the process is for your school. But some will know as early as April or May time, who's going to be the new teacher in junior infants, or who is going to be the teacher of the special class or in the specialist school or anything like that. So they will know sometimes in advance. In mainstream schools it can be a little bit later, but knowing and identifying that in advance, and then for all staff to work together to meet with the child and share that information. So preschool staff, new school staff, parents as well. So to gather all of that information so that the environment can be prepared and that visuals and schedules can be prepared and can be implemented at home. That's really important, and it really, really helps to make a really smooth transition. So definitely doing and spending a bit of time on that is really, really helpful. Teacher information sharing then. So between preschool staff and school staff is really key. So next to you, the people who are most likely to know your child very, very well are their preschool staff. So their preschool teachers, they are spending a large amount of their time often in one-to-one situations with your child, and they know your child in a different environment to home as well. So they have a good sense of what works really well for them, what might be potential triggers, what they cannot tolerate, all of those things. So one idea to help with that transition of information between preschool staff and new school staff is the idea of a pupil passport. So this can be really, really helpful with this. So what is a pupil passport? So this is a useful tool that's used to help support a child's transition. And what it does is it gives new staff working with your child key information about what their strengths are, what's going really well for them, what have they achieved, and also the areas that they might find difficult. So some areas that this might cover might include your child's strengths and interest, who are the important people in their lives, what are their communication skills, both verbally and non-verbally? You know, are they using visual supports? Are they using PECs? Are they using LOV? Are they using words? And how are they using those things? Social interaction skills then, both with adults and with peers. What are their strengths and needs in that area? What are their play skills and their imagination skills? What are their sensory preferences? Really, really important. Sensory difficulties or dysregulation, we call it, so where there are sensory issues, can really, really increase a child's stress, where they're having to tolerate certain sensations that they find difficult. If you think about the uniform, if you think about noise in classrooms, busyness, different smells with lunches, all of those things can be quite overwhelming for children. So what are their sensory preferences? And chances are they might have been exposed to some of those things already in preschool. So preschool staff will have a good sense of how best to manage some of those things in that environment. Other areas then as well, academic ability, what level are they at in terms of their preschool academic skills, what have they achieved and what they have yet to cover. What are motivators for your child? What are the things that they really like and find motivating that might be helpful in terms of how they learn best? And then what are the ways in which your child can be supported? So preschool staff will have a good sense of this. They might know that a particular approach, a gentle touch, or one-to-one, or a particular way of addressing your child might really, really help them. So knowing those little specific pieces of information and transferring that on to their new teacher can only help with making things really smooth. So this is a really good opportunity for family as well to provide information into this. So you as parents obviously know all of these things from a home perspective, so you can also add to this. And it's really, really important because you have that unique information about your child that's really valuable and really ensures that that transition can be as smooth as possible. So definitely think about putting together a little passport for them. So just more notes on this and what this looks like. So always write this from your child's point of view. So as if they are saying it, my name is, I like, I don't like, I am really good at, like those kinds of things. And use very clear and very simple language, very straightforward, so that it's not difficult what the main messages are. It's easy to see what the messages are. Give examples if you can where necessary. So definitely include a little example of what you're talking about. And include examples of visual supports that you're using as well. A little picture of what you have at home can really help give an idea of what works best. So this is an example of what one might look like. It doesn't have to be any longer or shorter than this. This can be perfectly fine. You might want to do a longer version of this, including more detail on all the different areas, or you might want to do one like this with just really key points that you want somebody to read. So this one just outlines what this child's name is, who their parents are, what he likes, what he dislikes, what particular triggers are there, any medical information that's really important, and what resources are being provided along with the little passport as well, which might be a plan from the teacher or a medical plan if there are asthma or certain medical conditions that need monitoring at school. So again, this is an idea of giving an outline of what a child's particular skills are in all of the different areas and what helps them in these areas, and what they might need another person to do for them or not do for them in these areas. So some suggestions and things that you might want to outline for new adults who are getting to know your child, so that they can best support them in a new environment. So the first day of school then, and preparing for this and all the things to consider in relation to this. So really important to try and get a good night's sleep the night before. Obviously for your child, but for you as well. It's a big day for parents just as much as it is for children. It's such a milestone for all involved. So try and make sure you all get a good night's sleep if you can. Make sure you've got your school bag packed the night before, lunch ready, clothes all organised, and show these to your child in advance so that they know that everything is ready, and there's a good preparation there, and the morning is going to be straightforward in that sense. Make sure you get up in time to have a good breakfast, and try and make it something fun for the first day if your child is okay with that. So just allowing a little bit of time for that. If your child is feeling really nervous, it might be a good idea to let them bring a little security item in their bag if they're allowed to do that, such as a favourite small toy, nothing that's too valuable or expensive, or a little photo of you or something like that that can give them that little link with something familiar. The idea of this is to keep it in their bag and to let the teacher know that it's there in case it's needed. Arrive in good time so that you're not stressed trying to get there in time, and that there's no panic. Stay for a short time yourself and leave when the teacher tells you that it's a good time to do so. Check where and when you need to pick up your child after school, and tell them where you will be when they are ready to come out to meet you. Plan a nice activity for yourself if possible on the first day after you drop them off, such as coffee with a friend, or something nice for yourself. It is a stressful day for parents too, and it's good to have something to take your mind off that if you're worrying about your child. So do reward yourself, congratulate yourself for getting to that point, all of that hard work, all of that planning, all of the preparation. So have something nice planned for yourself too if you can. Do keep your mobile phone on you in case the school needs you, in case they need to contact you, and make sure you are on time and in the right place when you need to pick up your child at the end of the day. Talk really positively about the day and do praise your child for going. That's really important. And prepare for day 2 and keep that good routine going. After school then. So it's important to think about what the build up might be like for your child throughout the school day. It is a new environment, and there is an increased idea of stress building throughout the day. So it's important to also consider that for some children, they might show very little or no obvious changes in behaviour until they are at crisis point. So it can appear that they go from 0 to 100 really quickly and with no obvious cause that you can spot. So the reason for this is often because it's the result of your child having to deal with a very complex social environment, lots of language demands, sensory needs all day long. So they're dealing with all of that all day long, and they're hiding a lot of that, I suppose, which can make it seem as though things then build up and go from 0 to 100 with no clear reason. But what they're actually doing is experiencing a build-up of all of those small stressors through the day, and then when they come home, something really minor can trigger a really big outburst because they've all of this built-up stress throughout the day. So often, as I was saying, it can appear that children are going from 0 to 100 with no warning or nothing to trigger it. But with anxiety and stress, it can be really difficult to identify what the triggers are, as they might not be triggers that would cause anxiety for you or for me or for anybody else. So the diagram that's here on the screen shows how stress and anxiety can gradually build. So for example, there might be a very busy classroom, then something interrupts the morning routine so that it's different, and then your child might be given a task to do that's too hard for them. Then 2 other children might start arguing in the background, someone might knock over a chair beside them, and that's the final straw, they might lash out. So if we look at stress as something that gradually builds, it's actually not going from 0 to 100 with no cause. It's a build-up of all of those little stressors. And for many children, that stress cake can build during the school day, but they know that, or they understand that they have to, or there's an expectation on them to hold it together in school. But as soon as they get home or into the car, the slightest little thing can set them off. So even though the root of the problem might be in school or occur in school, home is where all of the meltdowns happen and all of the lashing out happens. So that's really important to think about in terms of intervention, because what it means is that the school day might need to be altered a little bit so that stress levels are reduced or things are a little bit more regulated throughout the day. So although that issue might be school based, it's manifested at home, and lower demands when your child comes home from school can also really help with that regulation. So delaying and starting the homework, using a visual schedule, supporting your child to engage in something relaxing when they come home, giving them a little bit of space, all of that can help them de-stress from the day that they've had, and transition back into home. So just building on that then, after school, having some chill out time. So during the initial weeks of school, many children will experience increased tiredness while they're adjusting to the longer day, the new routine, and that's especially true for children with additional needs. So it's really important to help them to take some time to relax, to chill out, very, very important. And they might need some support to manage that free time, or it might be a time to engage in whatever their particular interests are, and that might help them to have a sense of calm and relaxation. So a little piece then on follow-up. So supporting your child's needs goes beyond the preparation stage of preparing for the first day at school and preparing for what school your child is going to go to, and it continues on after school has started. So it's really important to keep that open communication between home and school, keep using visual schedules, social stories, make sure you monitor your child's adjustment and their progress in terms of their socialization, their behavior, their engagement with others, the relationship they have with their teacher, and then also that the academics and how they're doing in terms of their learning. Again, the National Education Psychology Service, the NEPS service, they provide the service into school, and their remit is any school-based issue. So if your child is having behavioural issues at school, if they're struggling with regulation at school, if their learning is of concern at school, or anything like that, if it's a school-based issue, it's about accessing NEPS, which can only be done via your school. So you would be advised to talk with the principal, talk with your child's teacher about having your child prioritised for consultation with the NEPS psychologist. Further information. So further information can be obtained from a range of different sources. There's some lovely booklets, information leaflets, everything in terms of the information that you'll need around what the different school placement options are is within the document from the National Council for Special Education. So there's a lovely one from them on starting school and what the guidelines are for parents or guardians of children with additional needs. So you can get that from the CINO. So if you want to look at that, you can either download it there from the website that's on the screen, if you copy that into your browser, or the CINO will be able to send you a copy of that either if you want to contact them. Other sources of information then, there's a lovely school handbook for parents of children with autism from the As I Am website. And it's very specific to autism, but there's lots of really good information in that, so you can download that from their website as well. And Down Syndrome Ireland has a range of really good resources available on their website as well, and they also have information for teachers as well, which is really helpful. There's lots of really good things on the South Lee Autism Service site. They have a blog which is really helpful, with lots of information about how you can create a really nice environment that supports children with autism in school, and that can be school staff can link with that as well. And then our own service, the Developmental and Autism Psychology Service, we have a transition to primary school workbook, and we also have a range of tip sheets as well that you're welcome to have. If you don't already have those, you can contact the service and we'll happily send you out some copies of those. So many thanks for your time and attention in this webinar. I hope you found the information useful. If you have any further questions or follow-up, please don't hesitate to contact us at the service or to link in with the CNO. More often they are in a better position to answer your questions, but don't hesitate to get in touch if there's anything that you want us to further explain. Many thanks.